book lovers, it is G-Swizz here, and I'm here today to talk about some books I read in one sitting / one day. If you didn't know, this is a 7 on Sunday topic, and I'm the host of 7 on Sunday. I will link the Goodreads page down in the description where you can check it out and you can participate in a topic in the future, or you can suggest a topic. And this week's topic was inspired by my reading, okay? I love it when I can either dedicate a day to reading a book, or when I'm so compelled by a book that all of a sudden, without expecting it, without anticipating it whatsoever, I devour it within one sitting. I know that a lot of people do reading slump recommendations or one sitting recommendations or quick read recommendations, but in reality, a lot of the time, some things that I read quickly might be some books for some other people that they might read slowly. It just might not be the same thing. So I'm just going to talk about, from my personal experiences, the books that I've read either in one sitting or in one day that I just did not anticipate finishing within that time period at all. And just in general, I'm going to talk about some books that I was compelled to constantly read because they were just that engrossing and that engaging. This can be interpreted in many ways, but for me, usually the drawing factor is if the book is really compelling, or if it's just a really quick read, or if it's just very easy to read. Sometimes I will finish it in a day. I just want to talk about those reads that drove me to that point. First of all, I'm going to bring up a book series where I read every single one of the books in the book series and the spin-off series in a day each. That is how compelled I was with the series. I started the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series on Monday, and I ended up finishing it on a Friday. It's a 5-book series. I loved it, and for some reason, I just felt like I had the drive to read the entire series within a week. Honestly, Percy Jackson was perfect for that. I know that some people who grew up on this series had to wait a year after a year after a year to get the next book. I was kind of lucky enough to finish this entire series within a week, and then a year later, I went to the Heroes of Olympus series, and I did the exact same thing. I started the Heroes of Olympus series on Monday, and you know what's very funny? After House of Hades, I was so compelled to continue on with the series that on the Thursday of that week, I went through the final book in the Heroes of Olympus series. That was how invested I was in this entire series, or this entire universe in general. And I think that's why I'm having trouble with Trials of Apollo, because I don't have that time anymore to dedicate to binge reading all these books like I did before. I absolutely adore the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, and I highly recommend it to anybody who doesn't even just like middle grade fiction, but just likes fantasy in general. Even though, yes, it definitely reads a lot like middle grade. It's definitely got middle grade humor in it. It's definitely very clean, but it is very action-packed. It is very humorous. It's hilarious. I reckon that everybody can enjoy it if they so choose to. I'd have to say that when I think of one day / one sitting reads, the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series and the Heroes of Olympus series come to mind instantly. Now I'm going to talk about a book series that you can read on Kindle Unlimited, and that, my friends, is A Court of Honey and Ash, or the Honey and Ice trilogy by Shannon Mayer and Kelly St. Clair. Every single one of these books I read within one sitting, and no, I couldn't help it. I just needed to know what happened next in the story. And the cool thing about these books is that they're very short. I'm pretty sure that each of these books are only like 300 pages. And you get an entire trilogy storyline throughout them all. However, as much as they do feel rushed at times, there is a spin-off. There's still a lot more fleshing out to do in the world, and I'm so excited for the rest of the series. However, I'd say that you do get some closure in the last book, which is very exciting, but I just knew that as soon as I read this first book, I needed to continue on with the series and all the spin-offs and everything, because I was that invested and I was that engrossed. It's not only just a quick read, it's a very entertaining read, especially for those who like a high fantasy fiction or urban fantasy fiction, or just like paranormal in general. I reckon that this is a very good series to those who are wanting to find something new. It is new adult, but it's not necessarily as new adulty as the rest of the new adults. I reckon that this is a good starting point when it comes to new adult paranormal romance. Now I'm going to talk about another trilogy I absolutely devoured. I actually devoured this trilogy within a day. That was how obsessed I was with the Conspiracy of Us trilogy by Maggie Hall. I loved this trilogy so much. I will go to my grave pretty much saying that this is one of the most underrated series of all time. I recommend this series so much, and I'm actually quite devastated that I know that this series is out of print. It took me ages to find a hardback for this first book, or just to find all the books in hardback in general. That's how I know that, unfortunately, there's just no more reprints when it comes to the series, and this series is so good. I reckon that a lot of people are missing missing out because they slept on the series when it first came out, and now it's not even getting reprinted. So I would highly recommend, if the ebooks are available, you read it via ebook, or if the audiobooks are available, you listen to it via audiobook, because this series is such a compelling young adult story that really took me by storm, because I'm usually very much into fantasy, paranormal, romance type of books. But in terms of young adult, this being a travel thriller, something completely out of my comfort zone, I have to say that it really impressed me and it really surprised me. And I kind of wish that I found more books like this in the YA category, but I haven't yet. So if anybody has read The Conspiracy of Us and has ideas on what would be a good comp title for The Conspiracy of Us, let me know, because I genuinely want to know, because I want to be just as compelled in that story as I was with The Conspiracy of Us trilogy by Maggie Hall. And guys, I didn't just read Chosen Ones by Veronica Roth in one day and in one sitting. No, I read this book 3 times within 48 hours. That is how much I loved Chosen Ones by Veronica Roth, and that is why I consider it to be one of my favorite books by Veronica Roth. It's not even a quick read. This book, compared to the other books that I've just mentioned, is dense. I'd say that it kind of reminds me of Illuminate in some way. That is kind of why I recommend you listen to the audiobook, because the audiobook, amazing. What I love about the audiobook is that it kind of feels like the Illuminate audiobook in some sort of way, because this book is in a mixed media format, except it's not the same kind of mixed media like Illuminate. Like, it does have transcripts and passages from different essays and articles and whatnot. However, it is pretty dense, and I can understand why a lot of people aren't able to get into it that quickly. However, it's a masterpiece. I highly recommend anyone check it out if they haven't yet, because I just love the way that Veronica Roth writes, whether it be sci-fi, whether it be psychological trauma, all of that stuff. She does it so well, and I honestly don't know how she does it very well, and how she's able to compel me a second time after Divergent, like years later, but she's really good at it. And she's one of those authors that I highly endorse, because she knows what she's doing. All I'm gonna say here is that Veronica Roth, I believe, is just gonna continually impress me from this moment on, because I've already read this book 5 times, and every single time I pick up something new from it. Now I'm gonna talk about a very sad book that I consumed within one sitting. I don't know why I did this to myself. Honestly, it sent me on a spiral. It sent me on a spiral of reading this author's novels, and honestly, I'm happy that I have ventured into this author's backlist. However, One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid was a difficult time for me, but I just had to keep reading. I had to keep reading past the first page, and then the next page, and the next page, and what do you know, I read it in one sitting and I was heartbroken. The reason why I felt like I was falling apart while reading this book, and this book is like a whole nother level of torture for me, is because this book essentially follows newlyweds. One of the newlyweds goes missing, and the other newlywed has to grieve this guy for a few years, and then all of a sudden he comes back. But after going through the grieving process, she's engaged to another man, and it is just heartbreaking. I think it's heartbreaking for me especially because I was newly married when I first read it, and so it just broke my heart so much. It was a whole nother level of torture, but for some reason I could not stop reading. I really could not stop reading because I needed to know how she dealt with her grief. I needed to know how she would deal with everything and how she would be able to move on past certain things, you know? It was heartbreaking. But for some reason, Taylor Jenkins Reid just has this very compelling writing style. For some reason, she'll write the most wild premise, and you'd be compelled, but at the very same time, you'd be heartbroken. You want to stop reading for the sake of your mental health, your mental state, but you can't, because she has a chokehold on you. That is how I felt while reading One True Loves. That's why I continued on reading her books, even though this book was torture. And then I have to bring up Shatter Me by Tahara Mafi. I'm pretty sure I read this in one sitting. This being said, I read Shatter Me like 6 or 7 years ago, and I don't really remember much about it, except that it was a quick and compelling read, and it was just something that really gripped me. And I just have interesting memories surrounding it, because at the time that I read this, I was struggling with Bell's palsy. And I've mentioned this a couple of times on my channel, but if you don't know what Bell's palsy is, essentially Bell's palsy is when there's a nerve dislocation that affects the look of your face. So half your face is essentially deformed as a result, and it takes a while to heal if it is not permanent. So I had temporary Bell's palsy at the age of 20. I was pretty much going through my own personal lockdown with books because I was too ashamed to go outside. The Shatter Me trilogy, oh my goodness, compelled me from the very beginning, and I had so much time on my hands to just devour those books. And Shatter Me, this first book, I devoured. mood instantly. It was just perfect for me at the time that I was going through what I was going through, because I could resonate with Juliet. I could resonate with some characters, and yeah, of course, I was ticked off with Warner in the first book, but oh my goodness, that is why you gotta read the novellas. I enjoyed it, and that was the last time I read it. I have really fond memories about that time. I kind of don't want to reread it because I don't want to ruin those memories. However, I gotta do it sometime because I really need to catch up and recap on what has actually happened in the series before I go to the finale. And another situation where I read an entire trilogy within like a 24 to 48 hour span. Yes, I've talked about this a few times on my channel. The Red Winter Trilogy by Annette Marie. I highly recommend this series. If you haven't yet read it yet, what are you doing? You're constantly watching my channel. I appreciate that you're giving me the watch time, but please give the reading time to this series. I love this series so much, and no one is talking about it anymore. I've mentioned this a couple of times as well. It's probably because no one's really marketing it anymore. It's a backlist, independently published series, but oh my goodness, if you have Kindle Unlimited, you need to try it out. If you don't have Kindle Unlimited and you want to support the author anyway, I would highly recommend you pick up a physical copy or you listen to the audiobook. Oh my goodness, the audiobook is amazing. Physical copy, outstanding, especially with the art that I keep on showing. I will not cease to show this art because it's so pretty. There we go. There's some art. You're not getting any more of it in this video. You just need to read the rest of the book to experience the amazing art that is throughout the series. Oh my goodness, it is a reading experience that you will never forget and you will never regret if you just give it a try. All I want to do right now as I'm speaking to you guys is reread it. Now I'm going to bring up a romance novel that absolutely compelled me, and I did not expect it to compel me as much as it did. And that, my friends, is the X Hex by Erin Sterling. Now, I don't think many people mention this at all, but Erin Sterling is actually a pseudonym for Rachel Hawkins, who is a famous author already. Like, if you guys have read their young adult series, Rebel Belle, Hex Hall, all that stuff, etc. What I do know is that they're a famous author, period. They have another series under another pseudonym, and it's exciting. But the thing is, I didn't know that it was Rachel Hawkins until I finished the book, and then I went to the Goodreads profile of Erin Sterling, and the Goodreads profile essentially says that Erin Sterling is a pen name for Rachel Hawkins. And that blew my mind, because now I can officially say that I've read something by Rachel Hawkins. If you read anything by Rachel Hawkins, and if you had no idea that the X Hex was by Rachel Hawkins, then I would highly recommend you check it out. However, what I like about this book personally is the second chance romance and how it is so well done within a very short book. This book is really, it's tiny. It's literally 305 pages, and I think that's including the acknowledgements. It's such a short novel, and it's always in the romance section, but it definitely feels a lot more paranormal because it's essentially following witches. And I love the second chance romance aspects about this book so much, and I think I appreciate it so much because I felt like I had a fully fleshed out story within such a short period of time that I really cannot complain about it, honestly. I would love to spend more time with these characters. We are getting a spin-off which follows another character in the story and another love interest, which I'm so excited about. My main critique is that I would love to spend a series with this main couple. Rachel Hawkins, please write that, thank you. But I'm definitely gonna be looking out for more of Erin Sterling's books because they really impressed me with this book, and I would highly recommend this book if you're wanting a quick read as well. That's pretty fleshed out and has a pretty good second chance romance plot. Oh my goodness, I loved it. This second last book that I'm gonna talk about that I read in one day / one sitting is I Hate You More by Lucy Gilmore. This book I literally just hauled, and for some reason I felt like I had to read it almost straight away, and I am so happy I did. I was compelled to the point that I read this book in one sitting and I loved it. I went into this book with very low expectations because I haven't actually seen anyone recommend it here. I literally picked up this book because there are golden retrievers on the cover and they are absolutely adorable. And when I found out that this book took place in a dog show setting, I was so happy. It kept me so compelled. I'm at the stage in my life where I appreciate fiction that involves pets. I know that I don't see the pets as I'm reading or listening to these books. However, just the imagination of the pets, for some reason, it's so comforting. I've gotten to the stage of my life where I'm enjoying books that have some sort of animal companion, but I feel like the animal companion just has to be like a real life pet, you know? There are dogs in this book and I loved it. I loved it so much. So it compelled me to read. I did not expect this romance to come out of nowhere and be as steamy as it did, but oh my goodness, I'm so happy that I got the steam. I came to this book for dogs. I ended up with dogs and steam. And you know what? I ain't mad about that. This made for a really good reading experience. It is one of my favorite romance novels I've read this year, and I'm definitely going to look out for more of Lucy Gilmore's books in the future. The final book that I want to talk about that I read in one day. No, I didn't read this in one sitting, but I did read this in one day, because if I read this in an entire sitting, then it would have just been impossible to, like, I don't know, breathe. At times I needed to breathe when it came to this book, but I did read it in chunks, and oh boy, I am so happy I read this book in a day. It is a large urban fantasy book, but it was worth it. That, my friends, is Blood Like Magic by Lizelle Sambury. Yes, guys, I read this book within a day, and I was so compelled to do so. However, you're gonna need some breathing room when you read this book. This book is 16 pages off from being a 500-page book. It is chunky. There's a lot to go through. However, I appreciate it in all of its fullness because I was so compelled. And I was mostly compelled because I absolutely love the family story that is within this book series. I cannot wait for Blood Like Fate, and I just know that I'm gonna need to block out some time to read or listen to Blood Like Fate, whichever format of the book comes first, because oh my goodness, I'm so excited. Blood Like Magic was just magical, but not only that, it was really dark. It was really dark for regular young adult fiction. If you guys are squeamish, if you guys can't handle like gore or like really dark scenes, I do recommend Blood Like Magic, but I would recommend that you proceed with caution because it does have some horror elements to it. However, I didn't realize that I was gonna live for this book. This book is one of my favorite books ever. I don't think that many people are talking about it. I really think that this series deserves more hype than it gets. If you have not tried it out yet, what are you doing? You need to read Blood Like Magic because I've told you many times. You need to do it. So I guess that's gonna be it for this video today, book lovers. If you happen to stay to the end of the video, leave me this emoji. This emoji, in my opinion, is going to be the chef's kiss emoji. Leave me that emoji in the comments if you happen to stay to the end of the video. If you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. And also, I have social medias. I'm at GSwizzleBooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/GSwizzle. And finally, I'm at TikTok. I'm at GSwizzle on TikTok if you want to follow me there for some bookish content. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace.
How did I weigh half when I flipped it in a double? How did I weigh half when I flipped it in a double?